Hello, Year 3. Welcome to today's Enquiry lesson, where you're going to be learning about the history of photography and exploring chronology even more. So first of all, I'd like you guys to have a think about what you know about photographs, how you might use them, and how you think they have developed over time. So if there's someone to talk to, maybe go and have a quick chat with them and pause the video now. Okay, great. So I was thinking about how photographs have changed over the course of my life. So when I was your age, there were no such things as digital cameras that were available or mobile phones. That's how old I am. When we had to take photos, we had to use a camera that had a film in it. And if we wanted to see the photos, we had to then take the film to a shop where they would get printed. And you wouldn't be able to see the photos until you got them back. So unlike nowadays where you can take a selfie and you can actually look at the photo, and if you don't like it, you just delete it. We didn't have that opportunity. If we were putting silly faces in our photos by accident, we had to just live with it. Look. Okay, so how that's then changed over time is that I noticed when I started going to high school or secondary school, we had digital cameras towards the end of that, which is where you could take a photo on a camera and it would be stored within the memory of the camera, or a card that you would put within it. And then you could insert that into a computer, look at the photos and print them off. And then around about when I finished my university training was when mobile phones started being able to take photos too. And you could share photos freely across the internet. Now, what we're going to do first is have a look at a video based around the history of photography. So while you're listening to this and watching it, you could take some notes because you're going to do a chronological sorting activity around the history of photography after this. So make sure you're paying attention, write down any key words that you can hear, pause the video when you need to, and then get ready to do your construct meaning. Okay. Let me just share that again because I didn't enable the audio. Here we go. Okay, you should be able to hear it now.
Let me guess. You've got Facebook albums full of photos. You have photos on your computer desktop, on your mobile phone, on your bedroom wall. You see photos in magazines and newspapers on the size of buses, and of course in your family albums. We take photos for granted in a major way. But creating a picture that looked exactly like the person or thing that you were photographing wasn't always obvious. In fact, in the past, it was a big mystery. How could you, in essence, take your reflection in the mirror and freeze it in there? In the 9th century, the Arab scientist Al-Hazen had come up with the idea of using the camera obscura, which was literally a dark room or box with a single small hole in one side that let light through. This would project the image outside into the wall inside. During the Renaissance, artists like Leonardo da Vinci used this method to introduce 3D scenes onto a flat plane so that they could copy things like perspective more easily. In 1724, Johann Heinrich Schultz discovered that exposing certain silver compounds to light altered their appearance and left marks wherever the light touched. Essentially, Schultz found a way to record the images that Alhazen was able to project. But only for a little while. Schultz's images disappeared soon after he had made them. It wasn't until 1839 that people figured out how to project images into light-sensitive surfaces that would retain the image after exposure. And thus, photography was born. At that point, it was mostly two inventors who fought for the best way to make photos. One was British scientist Henry Fox Talbot, whose calotype process used paper and allowed many copies to be made from a single negative. The other inventor, Louis Daguerre, was an artist and chemist in France. He developed something called a daguerreotype, which used a silvered plate and which produced a sharper image. But the daguerreotype could only make positive images, so copies had to be made by taking another photo. In the end, the daguerreotype won out as the first commercially successful photographic process, mostly because the government made it freely available to the public. So now that photography was available, getting a picture of yourself would be a snap, right? Well, not exactly. This process still required a whole darkroom at the location of the photograph, which was a big hassle. Picture the early photographers lugging enormous trailers with all their equipment wherever they wanted to take a picture. Not only that, but the early processes had extremely long exposure times. To get a good photo, you would have to stand perfectly still for up to 2 minutes. This led to the development of inventions like the head holder, a wire frame that would hide behind you while supporting your head. It's also why you don't see people smiling in early photographs. It's not that life was that bad. It was just hard to keep a steady grin for more than a few seconds, so people opted for a straight face look. And then George Eastman came along. Eastman believed that everyone should have access to photography, and he spent many late nights mixing chemicals in his mother's kitchen to try to achieve a dry plate photographic process. This would allow exposed negatives to be stored and developed later at a more convenient place, instead of carting those dark rooms necessary for wet plates around. After starting a business which initially made dry plates, Eastman eventually discovered plastic roll film that would fit in handheld, inexpensive cameras. These cameras sold by the millions under the tagline, "You push the button, we do the rest." While Eastman was largely responsible for making photography a universal pastime, even he could not have dreamed of the ways photography had since shaped the world. It's now estimated that over 380 billion photographs are taken each year. That's more photographs each day than were taken in the first 100 years after photography was invented. Say cheese!
Wow, that was a really interesting video, and I actually learned something there, especially about how photos in olden times, everyone did look very sad and depressed, and you're going to see some of those in another lesson. However, we're going to do an activity now. So what you're going to do is you either have a sheet where you're going to cut out different time points on the history of photography and put them in chronological order. If you can remember what chronological order means, it means in the time that things appeared. So we're going to start with the first instance of photography and end with the latest. Now, if you've got the sheet, cut the different symbols out and stick them in order in your book. If you don't have the sheet, then you can write them down and place them in order. I'm going to share the sheet now for people who don't have it at home. Sorry about that. So you should be able to see it quite clearly now. There you go. I'll pause the video here if you haven't got the sheet, and then you can place these different objects in order. Okay, so once you've finished, this is the kind of timeline that you should have come up with. Check your answers. If you haven't got a right answer, you can just edit it using your pencil. Okay, so it started with camera obscura, was invented in 1021. And then in 1685, there was the first portable camera, followed by the world's first photograph in 1826. In 1888, Kodak sold its first commercial camera. 1939, World War II helped shape a new style of photography. In 1948, Polaroid introduced instant imaging photos. In 1991, the first professional digital camera was produced. And in 2000, the first camera phone was produced. Okay. So that's not everything that we're going to do, though. What we're also going to do, I'd like you all, so if you can see me, if you have the ability to get a camera phone, which most of you should have via your parents. If you don't worry, you don't need to do this activity. I want you to try and take a selfie. So I'm going to take a selfie. Okay, I'm going to show you my selfie. There's my selfie there. It's coming through a bit weird with the background. Now, using your phone's edit options, so you can go to edit, for example, here. Most camera phones do have them. I'd like you to try and change your photo into a black and white old style photo. So mostly with a phone like this, you can click on the filter option. And then you can choose a black and white photo. So as you can see, I've changed my picture now to black and white, which you can't see at the moment. Hold on, because of the background. Okay, there you go. And that's me in black and white. And what I'd love you guys to do is to share a picture with me or with Miss Mizuku of you in a black and white photo. Now, when you get back into school, I have an old style camera called a pinhole camera at home, and we're going to take photos using that. We're going to do some whole class photos. And I also have some old film cameras, so we can take some photos with those. I have a digital camera, and obviously we have our class iPad that we can take photos on as well, so we can do a bit more actual exploring. Okay, I can't wait to see all your work coming through. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.